Good morning and welcome to the Small Business Support Group. Everybody was flashing around the screen then. I've still got a cold, but everybody, it's okay. It's not COVID. They've come back. They've texted me this morning and said, it's not COVID. So whatever it is, I don't know. I've got a new disease. A new pandemic is starting in my nose. Right, here we go. Let's bring people on. Maz, good morning. Oh, no. Has she gone now? Here we go.
I'm here.
There you go, Maz, Mark, Grant, good morning. All came out at the same time.
Hello.
Grant's in the office.
He is in the office, I said.
Now, it's nice to have Mark back today.
Yeah,
he's had a few days off doing his running. So, now, I've been, we'll do a little bit in a minute, but I've been sitting on something for a few days now, and I didn't want to bring it to the table until we're all here, all the founding partners of the Small Business Support Group. So I'm going to bring it to the table now. Please don't be shocked.
It's exciting.
It's a picture of Grant. There he is.
Wow.
Now, Grant sent me this himself. What a brave man.
Why would he do that?
And I've been waiting since the weekend to put it up. You're very quiet, Grant. You're very quiet. You need to turn your mic up. Turn your mic up, Grant.
The mic not working.
It's very low.
I can't adjust it.
So this is just all the We'll keep talking while you
I mean, can I just apologise to the viewers, Matt, for a minute?
Please do. Go on.
Yeah. So for the last few days, I haven't been on for one reason or another. But it's all about having the right headspace, which I'll go into later on. But I just wanted to apologise to everyone because I know this is important to us all to have this support group, to reach out to not just the viewers, but obviously each other. And the amount of support I've had from the guys here has been amazing. But the last few days, my head hasn't been right, and I will go into that later.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Great to have you back, mate. You talk a lot of sense. Anyway, let's. No, you still can't hear, mate. You're really quiet.
Just getting rid of you. You look good, though.
Okay, I'll just dump it.
Just jump onto your laptop mic. That'll do. Oh, here we go. There's something going on now. Oh dear. That wasn't right.
Just getting Grant sorted out.
Say hello, world. Come on, Grant. What are you doing? Can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, that's it. Beautiful. Right.
Is that all right?
That's it. That's perfect. Okay, man, you're going to take it off today. Let's get it on. Go on.
So, good afternoon. And Mark, welcome back. Really good to see you back on the show. I'm going to talk about primary schools today, actually. I know we touched on it yesterday. So ministers are set to drop plans to get all primary school pupils back before summer. And Matt Hancock said secondary schools are to reopen by September at the earliest. And I think children's education is suffering. Their well-being is suffering. And their social skills will suffer. You know, for a lot of children, their immunity will be so weak from being stuck at home for all these months. You know, the virus cases are already, and the analysis of data from the Office for National Statistics by the scientists, I think it's from the University of Cambridge, shows that the coronavirus risk to children is extremely low. I mean, to be precise, the death rate for youngsters aged 5 to 14 in England and Wales is 1 in 3.5 million. 1 in 3.5 million. And for under 5s, it's actually 1 in 1.7 million. You know, the official data, and I've had a look this morning, shows that only 14 people aged under 19 have died with confirmed or suspected COVID-19 since the start of the outbreak. 19, that is. No children aged between 5 and 9 have lost their lives to the virus. No child. And we risk destroying society and the future of an entire generation because the chattering classes refuse to accept that there is no such thing as a totally risk-free environment. Never has been, and actually never will be. I mean, how silly is it that the same kids are being taken to protest, taken to beaches, taken to parks, will soon be able to go on a plane to some other country, but actually they're not allowed to go to school or even indoors to their grandparents. I mean, I've been really fortunate enough that I've been working throughout this pandemic, and my children's education has suffered, and it is totally unacceptable that while millions have been working from home using technology, that schools couldn't do the same in some fashion. I mean, I've got 2 children, 9-year-old and a 14-year-old. Both are very bright, eager to learn, have a thirst. And it was very rare that my kids ever took a day off school unless they were very, very ill. Now it's like they don't have a desire to learn, no desire to exercise. They seem to have resigned to the fact that they won't see their friends. And they were fine to begin with, but it's like they're giving up now. And I feel really sad. Why can't the government show true leadership and stand up to say that actually, you know what, guys, based on new evidence that has emerged since the beginning of this crisis, things can actually now go back to normal with only those most vulnerable to this virus being protected. To continue this charade, I think, is ridiculous. Studies have shown that the virus follows a pattern despite best efforts to control it. A vaccine may never be developed. And even if one is as effective, we need, have I just froze?
No, you're still on.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, so I was saying a vaccine hasn't been developed. And even if one is, as with the flu vaccine, if the virus develops a new strain, then if we have a new strain, then actually the vaccine isn't effective. And, we need to save lives and livelihoods from being decimated. The lockdown achieved its aim of preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed. So call that a success. Lift the lockdown across the whole country and get things moving again. If they can be in hospitals in a matter of days, the building of extra classrooms in playing fields and playgrounds could be done in a matter of weeks. And if we asked, if we're still social distancing, and let's just say they can't build the extra classrooms, then kids don't have to be taught in a classroom. Can they not utilize public libraries, halls, leisure centers? I don't know, public buildings. It's a sacrifice worth taking to stop the disruption to education. Are there figures showing how many teachers have caught the virus from key worker children? These key worker children who have been in school since the start of lockdown, many of whom had parents actually in direct contact with virus patients. If it's been safe for shops, transport, communication staff, I don't know, bin men, gas, electricity, and water workers, and everybody else to keep working, what are unions frightened of? Children need to go back to school, or we'll have a failed generation. Job prospects aren't stunning anyway. And with thousands of job losses predicted, we need to do all we can to help them. Why? Why is it always Britain that gets it wrong? Why is it we're the ones left behind? Why is it we're weeks behind and then we realize that now we need to wear masks, we need to do this, we need to do that? I'm really, really disappointed. So on that note, over to you, boys, and your thoughts on the matter.
Unbelievable.
I've got new ones. Look at that.
It's quite difficult to present with a nappy on your face.
I've been told this just looks like a bra. I'm not sure.
You know what? That was good. That was, mate. You look like Zorro.
There we
You
go.
always wanted to do hero, didn't you?
I can't even see. Oh, there we go. I'm good with the sword. Anyway, Maz, it's sorry. That's just
Before we
messed about there. I'm sorry, but you're right.
No.
Before we descend into what is complete mockery of it all, I'm so glad that Maz has brought up this subject, because over the last few days, social media, I've been subjected personally to outrages from parents because our local school, primary school, refused to send back one they promised over, on the Friday, that they'd be sending back year 1 reception and year 6. And then on the Sunday, the head teacher decided that it wasn't safe to do so because too many key worker children had put their name down, and therefore there wasn't the spaces anymore. I put a note up to people on Facebook who were outraged, and I could see and feel their concerns and even work with their woes that this should not be happening. As Maz says, we need to find a way. However, instead of getting the kind of response that I was looking for, 1 or 2 saw fit to say, so just because you're working and you're not a key worker, your wife is a key worker, and your kids are bored because you're on video calls all day, you decide to send them to school. And I replied with this. So now we're in the World War II, when the Vichy French went out and spied on their own people with the Nazis. And simply, you're putting a target on our backs, the target on the key workers, the people that have been through this from day one, that took their children to school after 8-9 weeks of agonizing whether they should go to school or not. But then took that place because, as Maz says, they've been going to work, being faced with all sorts, being under pressure all the time. My wife is, and I am proud of this, a police officer in the United Kingdom, where we're being flown up with mud at the moment with all these comments with protests that everyone is the same. Well, we're not the same. But my point here is this, that we took our children, I took my children in after 9 weeks of agonization as to whether it would be safe to do so. And they had a place from day 1. 2 weeks before any decision was made whether kids should be in full going back to school. And on social media, the outrage from some parents saying that this is unacceptable and yet you are at home, so therefore you could still be looking after your children. I have a place for my children because the government's guidelines was and is any key worker is entitled to have their children go to school. But to put a target on their back because they are going to school and yours are not is down to the head teachers across this country who've ignored advice and have seen unfit to get the schools ready, to be put in a position on parents and letting them feel the agonization of it all, instead of dealing with this professionally as other workers are doing in this country, as other employers are doing in this country with their health and safety. You have decided to say no, that the unions are right and we need to keep our schools out. We need to keep our schools out in England, not in Scotland, not in Wales, England and Northern Ireland. So our children, our primary school children, are the ones who are suffering here. So ask yourself, if you're a head teacher right now, how can you justify this when 6 weeks left is what you're being told is given? Well, I say this, and I think the government will step in at some point. You don't need your summer holidays. This has been one hell of a holiday. Not the sort of holiday you want on beaches, but our children have not been educated. So you simply need to do this. Step up like the rest of the nation will step up. When it comes to Britain being whether it's back to the wall, we will take the nation back. And that's what we're doing. When we see that people on the streets protesting for their rights, we should be protesting for our kids to return to school, not sitting there and accepting it and lying down and saying, do you know what, you're right. There is no evidence to suggest, as Maz says, that our children, and I know people and parents are agonizing over whether they should send their children to school or not, but give them the choice. And the choice is, if you're a head teacher right now, get your school ready. There are plenty who have, so I do not want to brush them with the same brush to it is pushed onto everyone right now. And this is the fact of the matter, that you need to do your bit for the children of our nation, because we will be a second nation, a second generation lost with all of this in years to come, as our children suffer through anxiety, through social deprivation, through not being fed, with those children whose parents are on the breadline and cannot afford at the best to feed their kids 3 days a week. They rely on the school free meals that are given. And at the moment, you're depriving them with this. So I am angry at the moment. I'm angry for everyone out there who sits there and points a target to key workers who have been throughout this, or throughout all of this, with their backs against the wall and trying to do their best by their own children. But it's because of the head teachers, because those who've made this decision that all the split and the divide is not their responsibility, by last minute sending notifications out to parents and saying, we aren't going to take in children anymore because there's too many key workers. Well, I ask you this. The reason there's more key workers, especially in my area, is because they're teachers, and their teachers going back to work, and their children are entitled to come to the local school. So if they can do their bit, why can't you?
Right. I've got questions. Who was that at, Mark? I was, because obviously
that's other people who aren't directly necessarily friends of mine on Facebook.
No, I don't mean that. You've already told me that off air, and you shouldn't really talk about that. I don't think anyway. But is your school not accepting people? Is that what you're saying?
They said that they would take reception, year 1 and year 6, and the whole decision was, and they closed the school down for a deep clean. Key workers were told, half term. I turned up my kids, even though they had a place, and said, we're going to be open. Nothing was open. No notification, nothing. Then I was told, like, when we returned after half term, we won't be open Monday because it's teacher training. We're getting ready to accept the kids to come back to school. I was accepting that. I am accepting of that because I think all kids should have an education. Then on that Sunday, the head, just need to point this out. She's only an interim head. So she's really upset a lot of people right now. Yeah, she wrote an email letter, and she had reprimanded 1 or 2 people who locally were in this, 1 or 2 people who were governors, for talking about the situation. Supposedly, they're just parents. They're concerned just like everybody else. And what she said is they have no places for you. Yeah, and key workers are the only people that should be there.
I think as Ginger Reynolds has put it on the screen there, that this is all down to the schools itself, isn't it? Because I'm fully aware that the school here, which Tina works at, has been open continually, even through half term as well, supporting key workers. I think it's down to actual school.
The problem is it's not schools in general, and I want to make that clear there. It's 1 or 2 school heads who've made this decision because, as Maz says, there is no clarity from the government. There's no direction from the government. They're simply saying it is down to you. Yet in Wales, they're saying you have to go. In Scotland, they're saying you have to go. This is 6 weeks of a lot of children across this country being split and divided because some heads are saying they won't accept them. And that is not all heads, because a lot of schools are doing their bits.
Wales has not gone back yet, has it?
No, but they're due to go back, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Next week.
Maz, what do you? So I've got lots of comments on this, but Maz, what do you think?
That was following on from what I said.
Yeah, but what? Obviously, he's just expanding the comments at what you said. I mean, what is with your school going on? Is it open?
So
is it shut?
Only key workers come in. That's
right.
From reception. And what is it, year 5 going back? Or I can't think now. But even then, they've said so Malia went in yesterday. She'll go Thursday, but from next week, they said we've got no space for her. So keep her at home.
And that's because they've physically got no space. That's
yeah,
what they said.
Don't. And my husband's a key worker. But I was more than happy to volunteer somewhere to be a key worker just so she could go to school.
Yeah. No, it's understandable.
You know, yeah, I mean, it's annoying. It's as Jim Reynolds had said, yes, it's the school, but it's also what you said yesterday about the government giving direction, putting their foot down and saying, actually, this is what has to happen. You don't like it? Fine. You know, but give a direction. And because they've not given a direction, everybody's just thought, I'll do this and I'll do that. And this doesn't work for me. And this is where all the confusion is.
No, that's true. Grant, let's bring some sanity to this. I can hardly speak because we know.
Don't tell me with that.
But our kids are sort of older. They're not at primary school, are they? So we have a different view on this because Catherine is next door to my office here. She has worked non-stop with online lessons, live lessons, work that's been pushed out, everything from Arden School. It's been I can't prize them enough. But she hasn't gone in. But she's been working there. I fully understand when they're younger, there is an issue because you've got to sit on them and make them do stuff. But when they get older, 16, 17, they're doing their A-levels, they should be able to self-educate and sort themselves out, which I know there's two different scales here. And also it's two different scales regarding how they're educated because the big schools, I'll have to call them the big schools. I don't know what the years are. The big schools, they've got their act together. They've got lessons going out there, but the primary schools, they have to have the kids in, and it's a different thing altogether. It really is. And if they haven't got enough space, they haven't got enough space. It's what the government guidelines have been, and also that's it. If they're sticking to the social distancing as they are, I know everybody's saying about, you can't, kids aren't, can't catch you off a kid. Well, you can catch you off a kid. The kids are safe. The kids are perfectly safe. They're not going to catch it. We know that. We're fully aware of that. But as I said yesterday, they're the carriers. If the disease is around, they're the carriers. So you still have to be slightly careful and how you deal with them. It's like a hot potato. It's you've got the child, and they could have the disease or they couldn't. So the social distancing they've done at primary school is amazing. It's fantastic, but it takes up so much space to do that. So they can't get all the years. I don't understand how the government think they can get all the schools in. Well, they've now said it's September, isn't it, for primary? And what's going to happen over the next 2 months, 3 months? I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean, even September, it's a question mark on it. They've said maybe the earliest is September, which now makes me think, we're in July? No, June. July, that's 3 months down the line. What if they don't go back? What's going to change that they'll have more space in September? The school will stay the same. They had all this time to put these measures into place, utilize playground, utilize the hall. And like I said, utilize public buildings, libraries, halls, leisure centers. Why can't you take kids there? I don't get it.
That's probably a little bit difficult doing that. It's an education, it's a school, so it's set up for security and all that. I mean, the security is horrendous in schools nowadays, Grant, what do you have to say on this? Come on, man. You sat there quietly.
The first thing I want to say is I just have a lot of respect for, Maz, Mark, and all the other parents that have got younger children that have had to try and keep their business going, as well as look after their children and educate them. It must have been absolutely horrendous and still is. Mark, I've obviously seen the way that you've had to deal with that. You've got, it's like you're getting it from all angles. You need to keep your business going. You've not got as much support as other businesses. And then you've got your wife as a key worker. And then you've got 3 young kids to try and educate. And so, totally understand, mate, why it must have been absolutely awful. And I think you've coped amazingly because you've managed to, throughout this, also keep your business going and grow it and been really innovative. So hats off to you, mate. And I can understand why you are so frustrated and why you're so angry because it's been tough. I realise that. And I think there's so many other business owners out there in a similar position. And that's why it gets to the point where we're at now, where we're getting the lockdown lifted and we're getting the opportunity to actually be creative and get our children back to school, which from an educational point of view is absolutely necessary. From a business point of view, it's absolutely necessary. You know, people like Mark and Mav need to do their business now and not be, you know, teaching at home. And from the economy point of view, we've got to do it. We are still left, we've still got COVID-19. It's a fact. But it's also a fact that if we don't try and get the economy going, it's going to cause us massive, massive hardship that will be far worse than COVID-19. So my two sort of points on this are, given, you know, after sort of empathizing with the scenario of so many people, for me and Matt, it's nowhere near as bad because our children are older and they're self-sufficient. However, there's two main things here. First and foremost, I think we've got the guidelines from the government. You know, we have, people are a bunch of crybabies. You know, the abuse that Mark's got is typical of, you know, people just shooting from the hip, not thinking things through. And because the government have been so wishy-washy with their advice, it leaves people's opinion to be aired who often have got a very sort of narrow viewpoint on the way they look at things. The truth is we have to educate our children. From, you know, from right through from the top of the tree down to the bottom, because everything comes together when the kids are at school. Being creative in the way that we manage them at school and knowing that it's not a perfect scenario no matter what is the next step for me. So the guidelines need to be set in stone, and the parameters of creativity within those guidelines for school based on obviously things like space, the timetable and everything else. So in other words, you know, we should be at least looking at taking all kids back to school and perhaps doing it working shift. You know, maybe there's a shift system that needs to be put into place if social distancing is an issue. So that's the first thing. Guidelines, I think it's ridiculous that they're not set in stone and say, this is what you do. The other side of it is this whole thing about, you know, the kids transmitting the virus to, you know, outside of school, if it becomes a, you know, a place where the virus can be transmitted. Now, if we knew definitively how infectious children are and how likely it is that they are likely to transfer the virus, and the reports that I've seen from what seem to be legitimate medical sources say that children aren't even commonly transmitting the virus. So not only do they suffer from it and don't show symptoms, they also don't transmit the virus much either. Now that information needs to be, you know, nailed down. So don't take my word for it. But whatever it is, whether they do transmit the virus or not, then we need to put the parameters in place to mitigate any, you know, any adverse reaction to that. In other words, they get home from school, you know, they take a shower straight away, their clothes are washed. And this is what our school have told us to do. They can't wear as soon as they get home, they're told the uniform's got to be washed every day. We've got to try and stop the transmission of the disease that could have been shared within the school. None of this is an ideal scenario. And the crybabies can moan about it and say, well, you know, we can't risk that. Life is risk. We've got to get back to normality, because the consequences of not getting kids back to school, getting back to work are far worse, in my view, the consequences of COVID-19, where we need to protect the people who are at risk, and children aren't those people. The teachers might be. You know, when Matt said the other day that her teacher turned up looking like a monster, you know what? I can kind of get that, as long as they communicate why. You know, that teacher may well have been vulnerable. And so fair enough if that teacher needs to wear a boiler suit and a radiation suit or whatever else. But we've got to educate our kids. We've got to get them back to school. We've got to work with what we've got.
No, you're right. As ever, there is a very long text that's come from Ginger Reynolds. It's blocked everybody off the screen there. Sorry about that. She has an issue with staff. So it's a class of 30 need to be split for social distancing. Then the class now needs to have 2 teachers and 2 assistants. And that's what is happening to our local school. So we're doubling the number of staff needed, maybe even tripling it for the larger schools. So that's the issue. It's the guidelines, yet again, the basic guidelines that the government have laid down to say that they have to have social distancing. So they haven't got that. They haven't got enough staff to get all the other years in. So that's all I've got to say on the subject. It is, you know, Mark and Maz, I understand, and I feel your pain there because of the, you know, you've got to educate the kids as well, and you've got them running around, and you've got to look after them. You know, mine and Grant's, they're just, you know, off doing what they've got to do for their own education. So it is very difficult. Yet again, we've said it before, the governments are always playing catch up on all of this all the time. And they seem to be reacting and not what do you call it? Reacting, not proactive.
Proactive.
That's it. Thanks a lot for telling me that.
I think it needs to be clarified here. Let's not put all the teachers and all the heads, especially, that's not what I'm saying, in the same category. Oh. It is one or two schools who aren't following or feel that they can't do what everyone else is doing, and that is what's causing the animosity in the community. That is what's causing the stress levels for parents in the whole community, because they are looking around and saying other schools in the area are doing their utmost to not necessarily get full capacity, but get teaching classes of 15 because they've done their research and that's what they're doing. And they're doing shift work, as Grant says. And yet we've got other schools just not taking that approach because they feel that, you know, the health and safety issue and all the rest of it. So what we're asking is, let's have a clear directive from the government or clear directive from the education secretary to say, this is what it should be across the board, and we're then going to help you achieve that. And that's what Maz is saying, you know, because I think what we're getting at the moment is, like you say there, Matt, is no direction, and it's being left to individual schools to try and come up with the plan, and it's causing too much disparity approaches to it all, but also it's causing animosity between the between the parents, and I get the frustration. But what I would say is, like, you know, remember this: when Caroline Flack, something totally different, when Caroline Flack took her own life, everyone said be kind to each other on social media, and I've seen absolutely disgusting remarks, not necessarily about this, but across the whole of social media, with all the issues currently going on right now with Black Lives Matter, you know, with schools, all of this. Just remember that thought. There are human beings at the end of the line, what you're spouting your vile stuff to.
No, I agree with that fully, because obviously dealing with social media, it is there is a lot of hate going around at the moment, and it's it's you know, we thought it was weird a week ago, 2 weeks ago with all this, and then the Black Lives Matter comes along, and that's just thrown everything else into total mayhem. I know we keep touching briefly on this at the end of each show, but it's it is, until we get some clarity of what direction our whole world is going into, it's so confusing at the moment, and it is really difficult. We're sort of at the end of the show. Mark, did you want to touch what you wanted to talk? I know you've sort of touched and gone in and out of it regarding the taking time out and why it's important. Do you want to mention a few words on that?
I will finish up on that. So over the last few days, I haven't been on the show for the simple reason is that overwhelming with the looking at social media, with getting personal remarks and face-to-face remarks sometimes. And we're all human. And as Grant says, I'm trying to run my own business. I'm not saying I'm the only one out there, but you know, when you're trying to do this on your own, you're trying to balance your family and deal with your own stress levels, it's important to take time out. As a few of you know, I've started running, you know, and I'm doing this for myself, but if I can help encourage others to you know, any type of fitness and get their mind straight, then obviously I'll happily do that. But what I mean is, if you don't feel for 1 minute that you're in that right space, do not beat yourself up with trying to do something just for the sake of doing it. And I'm not saying that everyone here isn't important to me any more than the show that we've, Matt's created with ourselves isn't important. Of course it is. But if you're not feeling you don't feel you're in the right headspace to be somewhere, remove yourself from that equation. Yeah, and remove others around you that are affecting your mindset. And I know Grant would touch on that as well.
Oh, Matt's gone.
All right. No, so I was blowing my nose and I had to mute. Sorry. Grant, you want to jump in on that?
No, I just agree with Mark. You know, you've got to take time out for yourself. You've got to make the right decisions for yourself. It's stressful being in business. It's stressful, even more stressful with what we've got going on. So take care of yourselves, guys, mentally and physically. So keep up the running, Mark. That's going to help.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Maz, you got a final few words?
Yeah, I think great point that Mark's made. You need to take a break before you break. You know, it's interesting, as athletes, we're the first to recognize that actually recovery is an essential part of peak performance. You know, the same principle is for us. You know, when we do not take care of ourselves, we pay a price. Innovation, creativity, resilience, empathy, decision-making, and team building are the first to disappear when we are burnt out and depleted. You know, our lives have been put on pause. Many have been forced to work from home. You know, all four of us have been working from home. You know, we can no longer travel unless necessary. And with this, you know, we have been given the power of stillness and the opportunity to unapologetically slow down. There is no other situation other than an outbreak of a virus where our world would come to such a pause. You know, this is an opportunity that we have. And as such, now more than ever, for those who are still under the lockdown, this is the time to go within and be still with yourself, heal, remove emotional blockage, meditate, yoga, run. You know, take this opportunity to do the inner work that you previously had no time for. And if ever there was time for personal transformation, it's now. And as the lockdown begins to lift, perhaps we will see the value in living a quieter and more peaceful life. You know, as always, individual change and transformation will always triumph.
Wise words there, Maz. Mary Ellen has said, wishing Mark well. Look after yourself, mate. That's all good. Now, I've just realised Grant stood up. He looks like a 1980s, 1990s MTV presenter, to be honest, when he stood up like that. I'm just going to... I've got a dodgy seat.
Take on me.
Hang on a minute. Here we go. I'm going to stand up as well.
There we
go. Look. We should all do this standing up. It's much healthier.
I have one of the raising desks in my home office here, Matt. I'd have to get into the office.
It's much better. This is much. We should have done this before. It's much
better.
better.
I've been sat down for so long. I felt like
we're all talking together. Hang on a minute. Right, Maz first.
Matt and Grant have stood up because they're going to salute you.
Yes, Mark, it's been great. It's nice to have you back, and I know you've been shopping the past few days, but it's difficult. You know, it's difficult when you look like that. That running makes you. I don't know. Oh, actually, yeah, that was me blowing my nose earlier. Maz took a picture, which was weird. That was. She thought I was snorting something. That was the funniest thing. You know. So that's it. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to leave you with. We'll leave you with that. Yeah, we'll leave you with that. Right, that's it then, everybody. Oh, we got another comment just come in quickly. Yes, that's a nice comment. Let's hang on. I'm confused now. Let's take Grant's picture off there because that doesn't look right. Thank you guys. Nice to come on Facebook and enjoy a proper debate. Woo! Without all the hate speech and negativity. Keep up the good work. I mean, that's good.
I do know Jen. She's lovely.
Can someone take a picture of that? So we've got actually, I will do that. Let me just do that. I'm doing it. Every smile. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Oh, Grant's got his hand in front of his face. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Smile. That's it. Perfect. That's one to use. It's brilliant. tomorrow we're going to. I do want to talk about Black Lives Matter tomorrow, and I know everybody's going to be edgy, but there's a couple of things that's happened today which I'm not sure about because, and I want to discuss them, and I'll leave this out there so everybody can just think about it for 24 hours and come back to it. Gone with the Wind has been removed off all streaming services because of its black connotations and slavery. Little Britain has been removed because the same thing, and Come Fly With Me as well, which obviously is from the same team. Is that correct? Should that type of thing happen? Because especially Little Britain, I'm just going to leave this here. Little Britain was taking the pee about everybody who lives in Britain, not a certain minority. So I'm going to leave that there. We'll discuss it, digest it, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. So everybody, we'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. See you all.
Take care.
See you guys.